Welcome to this Educast. Prizes effectively manage your UC, your Unified Communications. This is Audin. I'm the president of Delphi. Today is Jim Ortbals, who is the president of worldwide sales for VOSS Solutions, a company you should know more about. I'll teach you something today rather than just try and sell you something. And what's in this Educast is what's driving the prize towards UC management, and there's multiple reasons. Next, talk about UC management is important. Why is it important? And then move on to why you should adopt UC management. And then a perspective you might not have thought of, that your ROI, your return on investment, can actually be reduced with UC management. Start off, Jim, with our first question that we're going to deal with. What drives an enterprise towards UC management? What are the factors that stimulate this?
Well, thank you, and I appreciate the time today. When you look at UC management, barely come out of the box and say, wow, I need to buy a UC management solution for unified communications. But over the last several years, there's different things like unified messaging, instant messaging, web conferencing, video. There's a lot more that goes into UC than just picking up the phone dialing. If you add these different applications into the enterprise, of the cost is going to dramatically increase. And things like mobility and others, the variety of applications to choose from now inside of UC has made managing and deploying services much more complex and more expensive. And from a user perspective, there are a lot of options now that we have mobility services. We can bring our devices to work and the like. You're starting to see the consumerization of UC. So how it's being consumed by the user, they look at it as, why can't it be as easy as my iPhone or my Android device? Why can't I use those as my primary points of communications or reach the same type of experience I do on my desktop or in the office as I do on my mobile devices? So it's hard to add a lot of this into the equation, and trying to keep track of all that, you can imagine why the cost of UC is exploding. And it's not just up on the upfront side. Really, when you look at it over a 3 or 5 year period, the cost to maintain and manage and deliver that ubiquitous experience to the user does go up dramatically.
There's two kinds of scenarios here we could talk about. One is I've already got UC, and another one is I don't have UC. So let's start with the first one. A customer has a UC environment, it functions well, but they need this UC management if it's functioning well.
That's a great question, and I think in the scenario that we're talking about here is, well, you have a UC environment, it is working well, but how can you get more efficiencies out of your employees? How can you get more efficiencies out of your IT staff? How can you increase the automation and the time it takes you to see an open trouble ticket or open ticket to resolution? And how can you streamline your processes, not around your UC solution, but deploy UC or not redeploy UC solution around your business processes? And what gives you that flexibility? And how can you overall reduce your costs? So in this case, I think it's deploying or exposing as much or as little of the mood change type of task down to the end user is doable now. So you can introduce self-service and you can delegate that down to the end user. That is a definite cost when somebody has to pick up the phone or log into a trouble ticketing system to, say, do a PIN reset or to change settings on a phone or things like that. And if you can expose as much or as little as that down to the end user, you give control, you empower your end user, and you take that task or that burden off of your call centers, your IT staff, and you can redeploy them onto more strategic type projects. As well, your IT staff, you can automate a lot of the mundane tasks and, again, redeploy their use, their time, and their efforts, and quite frankly, their talents on things that are more strategic to the business. Really, it's about how do we better automate the environment, how do we reduce the complexity, and then we make sure that you can take as much advantage of your employees' time and efforts and talents into areas that you'll see the most benefit on.
I think one of the points you made sort of indirectly is the user here can actually manage more of their environment and make them more interested in the UC functions.
Is absolutely correct. And people feel empowered. They tend to use things more frequently. A lot of the consumer type devices you got, the more you can customize things to the way you use it, well, the more you use it, right? The more you'll take advantage of it. And I think use in this case certainly falls into that category. So if I set up my own device or my own find me, follow me, single number reach type of feature, well, it's going to be customized to the way I want it. Or I'm going to set up my phone based upon the profile I want it to have, the soft keys and speed, etc. These are just simple things, but the more I can do it the way I want it, well, I'm going to use it, the more it's going to be relevant to how I operate on a daily basis. And that flexibility and that customization down to that end user, I think, is critical, and it will help the adoption of more of the robust UC features, so that even enterprises that buy all these features and then watch the utilization rates of them across the board, maybe not be fully utilized. Well, this helps get to that full realization, full utilization.
Move to the second scenario, and we both encountered what I call UC skeptics out there in the market. Some are just being cautious, some are looking at the complexity, but what about the person who basically says, I don't have UC, I don't think it's necessary for me, it's all hype?
So there still are quite a few out there, and whether it's whatever the quote unquote fear factor is, whether it's economic fear factor or a this is too complex factor. I'm not sure I'm going to realize any benefits fear factor or obstacles that you need to mentally get past. I think what it is, I think once you move to UC environment, you're going to start to see a lot of it, not just to the way you do business or the way you communicate internally, but as well externally. And you think about a whole bunch of different use cases or scenarios, whether be single number reach, how you can reach internally, you can reach an employee wherever it may be, whether it's at their desk, they're on their mobile phone device, or you just dial one number and it finds them. I mean, it's something as simple as that. I think that's nice. The whole idea of fixed and mobile convergence, again, similar to single number reach, but taking one step further in the core. How do you ensure that your employees can connect into the network and reach the relevant they need, or as well reach and have exposed the same ubiquitous service across devices or across experiences? And then BYOD, it kind of ties this all together. When they can bring a device that they like to use from the house into the office, how do you make sure that when it's secured? And then two, again, it's the same look and feel from an experience perspective across the desktop or the at your desk or on the go. And as more UC applications get introduced into the future, again, whether it's video, telepresence, enhancements to web conferencing, all kinds of presence type of capabilities, and future things that we're not even talking about yet, how do you get your arms around that? How can you create that ubiquitous experience across the board, across devices, across the enterprise? And with UC management and use in general, we can provide that to you. We can provide an elegant solution to make sure that is ubiquitous across the board.
So the fifth bullet on the screen here, active versus reactive, recommending that the management actually should be installed prior to putting in UC so you're ready rather than waiting till later.
Absolutely. And the reason for that is because when you provision and when you set up a new UC environment, you want to try to create, a very consistent experience. I'm not talking individually, but I'm talking across the enterprise, right? So you set up different profiles based on the types of groups or the types of job functions. And if you put UC management in when you're architecting this and you're putting it in for the first time, it can help with that, setting up and building those profiles, building those templates, and having you onboard users in a very quick and consistent manner. And then the step that we call it day 2 on the UC management side, not the provisioning or configuration side, but the management side, we can help make sure that user experience is very consistent. And then how you map that back into, from an IT perspective, they have that single pane of glass now that they can look across the enterprise and see what the different what the network looks like, what the UC network looks like. And I'm talking from a monitoring perspective, but I'm talking about from a what's out there today, what versions are people on, what do I have, kind of inventory of everything that's going on, and it gives you business intelligence, gives you intelligence into what you're doing and what you have out there. We think for enterprises, when you start to look at hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of users, that intelligence is very, very critical, and we can help you from day one.
Really enthusiastic about this, but there's a problem out there that I see, and that is UC management is not adopted that well. Can you give us some reasons why people push back?
That's great. Well, really, it is a nascent. It is nascent. So as people were driving to deploy unified communications, they were about how I manage this. It was, I need to get this latest, I need to get instant messaging out there, our presence. So get that and get it deployed across the network. And then they were thinking about how do they deploy, as opposed to, okay, now it's deployed, how do I now how to manage? And so what we're seeing is this, it's not, I wouldn't call it a problem, but it's a challenge, right? And so as more and more folks have been deploying this, now realizing, okay, wow, this is complex. How do I get my arms around it? And if I do this, am I going to lose headcount because I'm automating things? And so there's a bit of that. There's a little bit of a fear factor. So really, what we're seeing now is no, we're not reducing headcount. We're taking a very, very smart headcount and very capable headcount, and we're automating the mundane tasks of this so that you can read up assets in strategic and more a higher value function than they are today. Instead of getting, you get a CC voice in an enterprise environment working on moves, heads, and changes, that's not the stuff that you want to pay them for. You want to pay them on the big picture stuff, right? And so we're allowing you to redeploy those assets because nobody's getting more and more resources. They're trying to be doing more with less. So we're helping you maximize the resources. And as enterprises are looking at this, they're going, okay, how can I retrofit this? And if they're flexible, how do I do this? And so what we're allowing people to do is we will deploy things on top of your UC environment, and we will conform to your processes today. We won't make you have huge changes to bring this in. We are flexible. We'll sit on top, and we'll migrate. We will meld to your processes and systems today.
That then leads us to the next point. This overall going to be an impact on the enterprise. Can you talk more about the impact of management?
It is an enabling technology, right? It really is. So the better you can get your arms around what you have today, the better you can get your arms around how you deploy future solutions, it's going to help with the adoption of all the UC capabilities down the line. And we talked earlier about that end user experience. And you can make it easier for them to set up what they like, how they like to use it, how they like to consume it. Well, you're going to make sure that they're seeing the full adoption of all the stuff that you bought from Cisco, for example, all the features and functionality, rather than only 20% utilization. So we really help make that easier from both a deployment, both from a management, and then from a consumption perspective. And we will reduce that total cost of ownership, again, because we're automating a lot of the tasks that do take time. And it takes time, and it takes a resource to do it. And if we can automate that for you, we reduce your total cost of ownership by redeploying those assets elsewhere or figuring out how you can maximize your resources you have today. So we do solve that very real problem of runaway costs on the total cost of ownership, as well as how do you get maximum utilization of what you've purchased and installed.
What you've talked about, I can tell you're intellectually and emotionally very positive about this, but I can't go to my boss if I'm an IT person and say, let's buy this because it's a great idea. I have to give some financial reasons. Talk more about the return on investment value.
Sure. We saw a report in 2013, so about 5 months ago, come out from an Emerges research. And what they did was they looked at a variety of different solutions, and they said, okay, when you deploy UC, look at the total cost of ownership. over I believe it was a 3 or 5 year period. The cost point is around $1,500. So when you look at it per year, that's the cost it takes to maintain. That they have to assign from an IT staff cost. So if we can reduce that with usage management from $500 per endpoint down to $500. So about almost a 70% savings. You imagine the costs, the discussion you could have with the CFO on or controller. I can really see this really reduces my cost. Holy cow! Okay, and therefore you can start to see on the TO. So the total cost of ownership over a period of time goes from $2,100 per endpoint. We're reducing the hard cost. We're saying that we can actually reduce those costs from $2,700 per endpoint down to just $1,000. That's significant, and that's looking at it from a design perspective, deploy, and then operate. So we're saying from the day 0, day 1, and then day 2 perspective, we can reduce that. That's a pretty easy business case to make, and it goes without some of the soft things that we talked about, which is greater utilization in consumption by your end users, and then where you take those costs and redeploy them. Those are some other soft benefits to this. But just on hard costs of this, we can show what we've seen is from third parties. We can see well over 50% reduction in your costs, to your staff costs, as well as your staff costs, as well as the overall ownership costs.
We've heard quite a bit here. Would you talk about some resources the listener can go to learn more?
Absolutely. So we have a number of different resources out there. You can go to YouTube and see some VOSS video of how and what we do from a light demo perspective. Check out our blog site. I constantly update on things I see out in the market, whether it's being at industry shows or having met with some customers or partners. You can see some of the I like to provide fairly frequent observations. And then in our resource site at VOSSSolutions.com/resources, we have a lot of case studies, ROI tools, brochures, white papers that are out there to talk about different pieces of the puzzle that we bring together to bring you an elegant UC management solution.
On the screen here, for those of you who want to contact Jim, this is his contact information. Is there any other information you'd like to put forward, Jim, before we finish?
Don't be shy. If something seems interested here with you, I'd encourage greatly reach out with me, and we'd be happy to run you through some of what VOSS can bring to the table.
Thank you very much.